Imagine standing in the middle of a packed train station or a bustling city square. For most people, the noise and the movement are just background static, a minor inconvenience of modern life. But for you, it feels like a physical assault. Your heart starts to hammer against your ribs, the air feels thinner, and suddenly every person around you isn't just a stranger, they are a source of overwhelming sensory data that your brain cannot process fast enough. You aren't just shy, and you aren't just antisocial. There is a biological and psychological reason why your brain treats a crowded room like a life-threatening emergency. If you've ever felt the desperate urge to escape a party or a mall, it's time to stop blaming your personality and start looking at your hardwiring. At the core of this discomfort is a phenomenon known as sensory processing sensitivity. While we often label people as introverts or extroverts, about 20% of the population falls into the category of highly sensitive people. For these individuals, the brain's filter, the gatekeeper that decides which noises and sights to ignore, is essentially broken or set to a maximum level of transparency. In a crowded room, a neurotypical brain might focus only on the conversation in front of it. Your brain, however, is trying to process the neon light flickering in the corner, the scent of 3 different perfumes, the distant clattering of dishes, and the subtle facial expressions of 50 different people all at once. It is the equivalent of trying to run high-definition software on a computer with a cooling fan that stopped working. Eventually, the system overheats, and you experience what we call sensory overload. But there's a deeper, more primal layer to this than just sensory input. Humans are biologically designed to maintain a buffer zone. This is known as peripersonal space, a literal bubble of neurons that fire when something gets too close to our skin. In crowded environments, this bubble is constantly being punctured. Every time a stranger brushes past you or stands just a few inches too close in a line, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, sends out a distress signal. For some, this bubble is larger and more sensitive than others. When you are in a crowd, your brain is effectively screaming that your physical boundaries are being violated over and over again. You aren't being dramatic, your nervous system is reacting to a perceived invasion. Beyond the physical, there's the psychological weight of hyper-empathy. Many people who hate crowds are subconsciously scanning the emotions of everyone around them. This is an evolutionary survival trait, the ability to read the room to ensure there is no threat. However, in a crowd of hundreds, you are unknowingly absorbing the collective anxiety, frustration, and energy of the masses. It's like being a sponge in a stormy ocean. You walk into a room feeling fine, and 10 minutes later you feel exhausted and irritable without knowing why. You have emotional burnout before the event has even started because you've spent all your mental currency tracking the moods of strangers you don't even know. Society often views the loner or the crowd shunner with a degree of judgment, labeling the behavior as agoraphobia or social anxiety. While those are distinct clinical conditions, hating crowds is often just a sign of a highly tuned survival instinct. Historically, being in the middle of a massive, panicked group was the most dangerous place a human could be. In a crowd, you lose your autonomy. You move where the mass moves. You lose your exits. For a brain that prizes safety and predictability, a crowd represents the ultimate loss of control. If you have a high need for cognitive agency, the feeling of being swept away by a crowd, either physically or socially, can trigger a deep-seated claustrophobia that has nothing to do with the size of the room and everything to do with the loss of your ability to choose your own path. There is also the decision fatigue factor. Every person in a crowd represents a potential interaction or a physical obstacle that requires a micro-decision. Do I move left? Do I make eye contact? Is that person going to stop abruptly? When you are walking down a quiet street, you might make 5 of these decisions a minute. In a crowd, you're making 50. By the time you reach the other side of a busy terminal, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive function, is completely drained. This is why you might feel brain fog after a day of traveling or shopping. It wasn't the walking that tired you out, it was the thousands of tiny calculations your brain had to perform to navigate the human sea. So, how do you live in a world that seems built for the loud and the crowded? The first step is radical acceptance. Stop telling yourself you need to toughen up or be more normal. Your brain is simply a high-precision instrument. A Ferrari isn't broken because it can't handle a rocky off-road trail. It just isn't designed for that environment. When you understand that your aversion to crowds is a mix of sensory sensitivity, boundary protection, and high-level emotional processing, you can stop feeling guilty and start strategizing. You can begin by reclaiming your sensory sovereignty. This might mean using noise-canceling headphones to create a portable quiet zone, or choosing to shop during off-peak hours. It means recognizing the hangover that comes after a social event and giving yourself permission to spend the next day in total solitude to reset your nervous system. Most importantly, it means changing the narrative. You aren't avoiding people because you dislike them. You are protecting your peace because you feel everything more intensely than the average person. In a world that is becoming increasingly crowded, noisy, and fast-paced, the ability to recognize when your system is redlining is a superpower, not a defect. The next time you feel that rising tide of panic in a busy room, remember, it's not a sign of weakness. It's your brain's way of telling you that you were built for depth, not for density. You were built for the quiet conversation, the focused work, and the stillness that most people are too distracted to ever find. You don't hate people, you just value the space it takes to truly be yourself. Embrace the exit sign. There is no shame in leaving the noise behind to find the silence where you actually belong.